طيب حمد، يعني انت بتقعد في اللاب يا حمد لغايه الساعه 4:45؟ حاضر، الكويز الساعه 5. خلاص اوكي ماشي يا حمد. كلاس لغايه 45؟ في كلاس لغايه 4:45؟ لا حول ولا قوه الا بالله. طيب ماشي مفيش مشكله. حاضر خلاص، يبقى كويز الساعه 5 ولا تزعل. السلام عليكم، صباح الفل. Welcome to microprocessor class, and we have a small piece in introduction in chapter number 1. We will finish it and we will go right away directly to chapter number 2, which is the microprocessor. شكرا يا حمد. Okay, so the quiz for the chapter 1 will be next Tuesday at 5. Next Tuesday at 5. Okay. طيب جميل. طيب نقوم بقى نعمل ايه؟ نقول بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نقول in the last lecture, the last thing that we discussed is we go a little bit to discuss the flow of ايوه بالظبط، اللينكر والكومبايلر والكلام. يبقى احنا دلوقتي I as a programmer, okay, I'm an assembly programmer, so I have, okay, everything is stored in a files في الكمبيوتر سيستم صح؟ I as a programmer I will write مين بقى؟ the file.asm. ASM stands for assembly. اوكي؟ تمام؟ لا بلاش الاسمبلي، نرجع شويه. تمام؟ Let's go to the high-level language. Assume that I'm doing a high-level language programming. Okay? So I will write down my program and I have to save it with some extension for the high-level language. If I'm writing C or C# or C++ or whatever. Okay? So this will be the extension of the file. طيب بيحصل ايه بقى؟ This file will go through مين؟ البلوك كده اسمه ايه؟ اسمه ايه البلوك ده؟ ايوه كده كومبايلر. الكومبايلر اللي هيعمل ايه؟ The compiler will convert the high level language file into ايه بقى؟ يروح مطلع لي هنا ايه؟ يروح مطلع لي هنا assembly. طبعا if I am writing the code in assembly from the beginning, okay, so that means I'm skipping this step. Right. Then what I have another guy here اسمه ايه بقى؟ ها؟ اسمه ايوه كده اسمه الاسمبلر. الاسمبلر what's the job of the assembler? The assembler will take the .asm file and generate for me a new file. اسمه ايه بقى؟ This is OBJ file, an object file. Okay, what is the object file? This is the machine file. This is written in machine language. Okay, even this is in English language. Still, you can understand it. This is actually what you will be writing throughout this class, assembly. Okay, and then generate for you binary machine language file. Okay, right. What's after that? I have a name. اللي اسمه ايه بقى؟ اللينكر. اللينكر will do what? Hold a second. Hello? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. No, no. Can you come at 11? Because I have a class. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. ماشي يا شباب؟ فنيجي نعمل ايه بقى؟ اللينكر. اللينكر يعمل ايه؟ linker will generate for you the final product اللي هو ايه بقى؟ طبعا ده برضه ايه؟ ده 1 و 0. تمام؟ ده ايه بقى؟ What's this? This is that. اسمه ايه ده؟ Executable file. Okay? Executable file means file contains ones and zeros. Only who understands this file is the microprocessor. Okay? So now let's show that the steps that we have shown here is the program development steps. Program development. I'm developing my program, okay? I'm generating a program to be run on my machine, okay? I'm going through these steps, okay? احنا قلنا في two phases للprogram. في development وفي execution. Execution اللي هو تنفيذ البرنامج. Execution is done by the microprocessor. Now we finish the development. How the execution is done and what actually the linking is doing. First of all, let's explain a little bit what linking is doing. Linking is doing what? Okay, you understand assembly code for the microprocessor. Okay, this is the code that you write to the microprocessor. But do you only deal in your program with the microprocessor? The answer is no. Okay, I want you to perform some operations with my system. What's the system? System means the whole computer system, including input-output devices, including the screen, including everything. Okay. So the input-output devices, the other devices other than the microprocessor that you write your code for, is the input-output. اللي هم ايه؟ السكرين output, البرينتر output, السكانر input, الماوس input, الكيبورد input, الهارد ديسك input واوتبوت. مش كده؟ Okay. So, do you as a programmer understand and know how to write codes for those other peripheral devices? The answer is no. Okay. In order to print something to the screen, okay, or print something to the printer, I don't have to go and learn the assembly coding or the coding assembly, okay, for how to write code for the printer to print, or how to write code for the screen to display something. Okay, that's why they develop what's called the drivers. What are the drivers? The drivers are actually the software, okay, that the coding similar to the assembly that is already pre-written for you, okay, to deal with the input-output devices. So that's why when I first connect my device, my input-output device, to my system, to my computer, اللي بيحصل في ايه؟ بيحصل phase of configuration. Configuration means المكنة خلاص بتتعرف على الهاردوير اللي توصل لها. Okay? So you have to install the drivers. You have to install the drivers. Okay? What are the drivers? It is the software that will allow the operating system to deal with your device and also allows, okay, the other programs to deal with the device. Okay? So the code that you can use to deal with the input-output devices mean the drivers. Okay? Part of the operating system. لأن الكمبيوter is managed by what's called the operating systems. An operating system carries all the drivers, okay, for all of the devices connected to your PC. تمام؟ طيب now I am as a programmer wanted to talk to one of my input output devices. I will go and refer to the OS. أسأله يا عم OS, I want to print something to that screen. Okay, so the operating system will help me to locate the drivers for this. Okay, and will give me the code to deal with this input output device. Agree? Make sense? حد فاهم حاجة؟ نكمل؟ So جميل. يحصل ايه هنا بقى؟ Okay. So in the linking step, what happens? The linker will go and grab your object file from your assembly and will check. Do you want to talk to the printer? Yes. You use some command or some function to print to the printer or to the screen. So he will go and talk to the operating system. اديني يا عم الدرايفر بتاع okay? Give me the code in binary ones and zeros of how to deal with this input output. And go and grab it. Okay? It is similar to your object. It's another object for the printer, another object for the screen, another object for your hard disk. All those object files exist in the drivers. Okay, he will go and grab those objects. So he will collecting different object files from the different. Okay, depends on what kind of operation that you want to do. Okay, on your system, and will collect them together and linking them together to generate for you the final product اللي هو executable file. Now the microprocessor has a ready-made executable that all the commands that you are using exist inside this executable to deal with all the peripheral devices and the microprocessor, okay, code for them. If some of your commands اللي انت كتبتهم كassembly programmer will go to be executed in the microprocessor, and other commands are actually to deal with your peripheral devices. All of this is managed by the operating system. That's why we need an operating system to run the whole system. Okay? The commands that you write, okay, if you want to talk to any of your peripheral devices, or when the microprocessor is executing some codes not directed to the microprocessor, but is directed to the input-output devices, okay, he have to call those devices, okay? That's why we call this a system calls. What's a system calls? These are some instructions inside your code, okay, that's calling the system, that is actually deal with the system. The system اللي هو يعني means it's linked to the operating system to perform something on the peripheral devices, inputs or outputs. Agree? يبقى فهمنا what's the system call? A system call is the command that you put inside your object file here in order to indicate to the linker I need the operating system I want it to be linked to the operating system to give me the drivers for some of the devices. Okay, so the final product of the executable should have the appropriate ones and zeros for this system call. يجيب منين الكود ده؟ يجيبه من الدرايفرز. Managed by me by the OS. يبقى فهمنا what is the job of the linker, what is the object, what's the executable, what's the operating system, what's the system call. We explained all of the process. Agree? Make sense? Any questions? Of the screen and the memory, or these are done by the OS. محمد متلخبط فيه يا محمد. So you as an assembly programmer has access. I mean, you have access to actually 3 things. An assembly programmer will be dealing with 3 things so far. Okay, we will teach you at the end of the class. We have a chapter for the I/O. Okay, we will discuss how can you deal with the I/O. But the assembly programmer is writing his code for 3 things. Okay, you give instructions to the microprocessor. Okay, you are dealing with the registers. You are dealing with the main memory. Okay, this is what we will be learning throughout the class. How can so I have to teach you, okay, what kind of instructions that you have in your microarchitecture. Okay, how can you deal with the registers? How can you deal with the memory? So you cannot be an assembly programmer without knowing those 3 things: instructions, memory, registers. Okay, now can the assembly programmer deal with the I/O? Yes. Okay, but will you be an expert in I/O? It depends. But I/O is a بحر كبير. It depends on the device that you are talking to in the I/O. If you are talking to the screen, so you have to go and learn how the screen is working, or the printer, and what are the differences. So if you wanted to write codes to the printer, okay, if you wanted to develop programs for, or driver, you want to build the drivers, so you have to go to your input-output device and understand it, okay, in order to write code for it. Where the executable is stored. الفايلز دي كلها السي والاسمبلي والاوبجكت والاكسكيوتابل دول ايه؟ فايلز. الفايلز بتتحط فين؟ في السكندري ستورج. امتى؟ when I save the files. okay, automatically الكمبايلر اوكي بياخد input فايل وبيطلع لي الفايل ده. هيحطه فين؟ طبعا بيحطه فين؟ بيحطه على الهارد ديسك. اوكي بيحطه على الهارد ديسك. يبقى كل ما واحد من دول بيشتغل بيطلع الاوتبوت بتاعه ويسيبه فين؟ على الهارد ديسك. اوكي on the hard disk. يبقى these files will be on the hard disk. تمام؟ all of your files are on the hard disk. تمام؟ طيب احنا دلوقتي شرحنا مين؟ البروجرام ديفلوبمنت فيز. طيب البروجرام اكسكيوشن فيز. Now you have an executable file موجود فين؟ على الهارد ديسك بتاعك. في اي دايركتري خلق ربنا في الدنيا، حطه على ديسك توب، حطه على your home directory, my computer, whatever، حطه على فلاشه. Okay? Now let's go and explain the execution phase. Execution phase. بيحصل ايه في الاكسكيوشن phase؟ Let's go and demonstrate the execution phase of a program. Now we are talking about a program that's already developed. So I have the executable in my hand on the hard disk. بيحصل ايه؟ How can you execute any program? تعمل ايه؟ يبقى هنا هنكتب ايه؟ البروجرام اكسكيوشن سيناريو. يبقى دي 1 ودي هنا 2. برافو يا عمر، رائع. أول حاجة بتحصل and we will explain this in more details in the next chapter. أول حاجة بتحصل إيه؟ أنا قاعد على جهاز الكمبيوتر وعايز أشغل برنامج. أنا مش ديفلوبر بقى. I am a user. I'm just a humble user. Okay? poor user. خلاص؟ الإكسكيوتابل جاهز عندي. البرنامج بتاعي موجود على الهارد ديسك. I want to execute it. We need to go and discuss the scenario happening for the execution. بيحصل ايه؟ بتعمل ايه انت؟ In order to execute any program, you will go and run it. Run it بقى بأي طريقة. دبل كليك على الويندوز or you write a command to execute this program or whatever. So when you double click, what happens in the computer system? When you double click on the executable file on a program, this is an order to the operating system to go and load the file, executable file, okay, from the hard disk, copy it فين؟ نمسح بقى الكلام ده؟ نمسح الفيس دي؟ ايه رايكم؟ طيب نمسح الكلام ده. خلاص انا عملت ديفلوبمنت للبروجرام بتاعي. انا عايز دلوقتي اشغله. اوكي؟ Program execution. For the program execution, I have some program.exe. موجود فين؟ This is on hard disk drive. اليوزر جه وعمل ايه؟ double click on this. ايه اللي بيحصل؟ operating system, this is an order for the OS to take this file and load it, copy it فين؟ هنكوبي it فين بقى؟ هنكوبي it فين؟ عليكم نور in the main memory. يبقى copy of your executable will go from the hard disk to the main memory. And يبقى دي step number 1 اللي بيعملها الاو اس. step number 2 بيجي يدور هنا on the main memory. Okay, he is actually identifying a what we call a pointer. هنتكلم عليه in the next chapter. This pointer is pointing to the starting location of your executable. The starting location of your executable. And an operating system will provide this pointer لمين بقى؟ لمين؟ هي provide this pointer لمين؟ للمايكرو بروسيسور. تمام؟ المايكرو بروسيسور okay will know the location of this pointer and will take an order from the operating system, go ahead and execute the program in the memory right now starting at this location. Okay, then the microprocessor will do what? Now he knows where is the start of the program. He will do مين بقى اللي مذاكر من المحاضره اللي فاتت؟ هيعمل ايه المايكروبروسيسور؟ اوكي، البروجرام دلوقتي كله موجود فين؟ في المين memory. The program is in the main memory. All of the executable is loaded here. He will go and he has a pointer to the start of this program. ايوه كده الناس الصاحيه. شكرا خديجه ومها ومنتاله وهند وتمارا، برافو عليك، وحصه. ايوه كده الناس الصاحيه. تمام؟ هيعمل ايه؟ He will go into the microprocessor cycle. هيبتدي يعمل ايه؟ يعمل 3 steps. Fetch. He will go and grab the first instruction from the main memory. Okay. ده هنا اسمه ايه؟ السيستم bus. تمام؟ He will go through the system bus, go and fetch the first instruction, decode the first instruction, then execute the first instruction. And then will keep decode he will go into those 3 steps for the first instruction. Finish the first instruction, يروح ناقل علي بعدها automatically. He will shift this pointer to the next instruction, fetch, decode, execute. Next instruction, fetch, decode, execute. Next instruction, fetch, decode, execute. Okay, and he is keep doing this forever. تمام، لغايه لما ايه اللي يحصل؟ تمام؟ الجهاز مهنج؟ لا مش مهنج، شغال. طب وبعدين يحصل ايه؟ يجي الاو اس يقول له وقف. اوكي، اليوزر راح داس على الاكس اللي فوق دي بتاعت البرنامج، او داس على كوماند اسمه كلوز. خلاص؟ This is an order to the microprocessor. Stop execution of this program and go to the other program. Okay? Or change the focus to the operating system itself. The operating system itself is a program running on the machine. And a microprocessor is executing commands from your own program as a user and also for the operating system. The operating system is a program by itself, running also on the microprocessor. That means the microprocessor is not only running your program, it's running the operating system and your programs as well. Result. So if you press on the X or you close your program هيحصل ايه؟ The executor will be erased from the main memory, okay? And that's it. During the execution of your program, if you're giving some orders to store your output on the hard disk, that means the microprocessor will also deal with the hard disk to store some files. كده ولا ايه؟ Agree? Make sense? Any question? يبقى احنا we understand the program development phase and the program execution phase. تمام؟ Clear? Any question? So, what is our focus for those course? Our focus for those course is to write the assembly code. Okay? In the lab, we will also learn how to take this assembly and generate an executable for it. Okay? To see how can we deal with it, with the computer system, with the microprocessor. And the most importantly, which we will spend the most of our time is doing, is this process that the microprocessor is doing, these 3 cycles that the microprocessor is going through between himself and the microprocessor, including also inside هنا عندي ايه؟ جوه ايه؟ عندي registers وعندي هنا مين كمان؟ ALUs. تمام؟ يبقى احنا دلوقتي حاطين نفسنا مكان المايكروبروسيسور. احنا عايزين نفهم how this microprocessor is working. The microprocessor is mainly dealing with 3 items. It deals with the main memory, it deals with the registers inside it, it deals with the ALU inside it in order to execute some program. We will develop the programs in assembly and we will demonstrate how can the microprocessor can execute those programs. So we have to understand well the microprocessor, its registers, its ALU, and how he deal with the most important piece here اللي هي مين؟ main memory. We will spend a significant amount of time to understand the microprocessor, its system bus, the main memory, and how to deal with it, also the registers. Since we are not a high-level language programmers, we are not learning here high-level language programming. We have to deal with a specific processor. Okay, so for this class, we choose to learn the x86 machines that is developed in the market by 2 giant companies, Intel and AMD. They base their architecture on these series of microprocessors called x86. So I have to learn the x86, I have to learn the registers in the x86, I have to learn the instructions available اللي هي reflecting the ALUs, okay? I have to learn the memory hierarchy, I have to learn the system bus. Agree? Make sense? Any questions? مها ليه اخترت الاكس 86؟ انت رايك ايه؟ اول حاجه انا حر. انا اخترت الاكس 86، انا عاجبني الاكس 86. But can you imagine why I need x86? ليه الاكس 86؟ Because the x86 is the processors. Okay, these are ده شغل بيزنس بقى. هم ابتدوا يقسموا التورته. شركات المايكرو بروسيسورز، الكومبانيز that develop microprocessors, how they are actually dissected their market shares. Those two companies have focused on the PCs, the laptops, the desktops, the machines for the PCs. PCs means the machines in your home for the personal computers. Okay, the personal computers for your it's exactly بالظبط. حلو قوي يا عبد العزيز قال كلام. It's common. It is everywhere. It is most popular. Okay, when I teach you x86, you can try writing your assembly, developing your executable, making assembly, compile and run or assemble your code, okay, on your own machine, and you can see things being executed. Okay, this is easier for you. I can just go and grab an architecture that we don't have in our PCs. Okay, so that means I have to لازم اوفر لكم. I have to make it available for you. Okay, these kind set of processors and we can program them. طب ونخش في العك ده كله. ما البي سي قدامنا ده احنا قاعدين نستخدمه طول النهار والليل. تمام. You have your PC. It's x86. So let's go and learn the x86. تمام. Agreed? Make sense? Is there a chance that the program will run out of instructions, or should we close the executable? حلو قوي. All what you are explaining here or asking here, Abdul Rahman, we will answer it in the next chapter. Okay? But before I answer your questions here, all the questions and concerns that you have, Abdul Rahman, are valid, and we will cover them. Tamam? But let us wait a little bit. Let us move now. We are actually finished our introduction. We need to go and discuss the details of the x86 machines, okay, and learn it, okay, know how it is designed from inside. Actually, what kind of system bus that it has, what kind of register it has, what kind of instructions it has, in order to start preparing ourselves for developing assembly codes for those machines. We are moving to chapter number 2. If what we have explained is clear enough, let's move and go in on more deep details. Okay, this is chapter 1. What we have explained here, we finished chapter number 1. طبعا at the end of the slides for chapter number 1, you will find some slides talking about the different softwares. في عندنا حاجه اسمها الاوبريتنج سيستم زي ما اتكلمنا النهارده عليه. اوكي، في اليوزر بروجرامز. طبعا الاوبريتنج سيستمز في منهم different types. There are many vendors also developing different operating systems. طبعا الموست famous operating system اللي هو مين؟ الويندوز. اوكي، اللي عامله شركه مايكروسوفت. في another operating system like الماك او اس or الاي او اس. اوكي، that's developed by Apple. في another third operating system اللي هو مين؟ بالظبط كده اللينكس او اليونكس اللي هو based on Unix. يبقى we have 3 main operating systems in the market. We have the Unix or Linux. كان زمان اسمه Unix وبعد كده they developed طوروه بقى اسمه Linux. Okay, we have the Linux operating system. We have the Mac or the iOS, and we have the Microsoft OS, which is the Windows systems. Okay. طبعا ال different operating systems عندنا طبعا الاندرويد for the smart devices. جوجل كمان ايه دخلت بالاوبريتنج سيستم بتاعها اللي هو الاندرويد. تمام؟ صح مصبر. يعني لو احنا بنتكلم على البي سيز والماشينز مش السمارت ديفايسز، فاحنا بنتكلم على الثري مين اوبريتنج سيستمز دول، الويندوز والاي او اس وال مين الثالث؟ واللينكس. تمام كده؟ اوكي. طبعا كل كمباني من دول each of those companies is actually bringing generations of their OS. اوكي. الويندوز فات برضه ايه مر بايه ب a lot of generations، اللينكس مر ب a lot of generations، الماك الاي او اس مر ايه ب a lot of generations. تمام؟ We will not go into that. We are not in an operating system class anyway, but we are just discussing the operating system as it is related to the microprocessor. Okay, right now we want to go and start in the chapter number 2. Okay, we titled this chapter Microprocessor Architecture. تمام جميل قوي. طيب we will talk a little bit about history, so let me switch the gears here to display my screen. So I now switch it to the screen because we have some history and we need the help of the slides in this part. So as we agree, we are talking about the x86 architectures. Okay. Still, we actually in this chapter we will go and dig more about the microprocessor registers, ALUs, system bus, and the main memory. Actually, the most important two parts that we want to deal with in this chapter is to understand what is the main memory, how it is laid out, and what are the registers exist inside the microprocessor, and how they are named and how they are being accessed, what is the purpose of each of them. Before we go and discuss all of this, طبعا هنا the diagram here in slide number 2 is very general. Okay, it's not talking about a particular microprocessor, it's talking about generally. So let's go and talk in more details about the microarchitecture. For the x86 and for any machines, we are actually have what's called the system bus. The system bus is divided into 3 pieces. Okay, something called the address bus, something called data bus, something called the control bus. We will discuss each of those, but before we will go, because actually the bus is the most important piece of hardware, because actually this is what connects the microprocessor لمين؟ الباص بيكونكت المايكروبروسيسور لمين؟ الناس نامت ولا صاحيه؟ المين ميموري بالظبط كده، والاي او ديفايسز. تمام؟ Most probably the main memory. So we will dealing with the main memory extensively. Okay? So one of the most important parameters when I talk about different architectures or different generations of some machine is its bus size. Okay? And bus size. Fine. Here we are talking about the 8086 and 8088 machines. What's 8086 and 8088? if you wanted to understand this a little bit here, so this slide here, slide number 4, is actually talking about the different generations starting from 1971 from Intel company that actually developed or not only Intel, actually it was IBM. Yani the first machine was developed by IBM, and then Intel have taken the architecture later on, and they deviated each of them. So the first microprocessor chip have been developed in 1971, and they call it the processor 4004. Okay, it has only a data bus of 4. So the numbers here for the address bus and data bus indicates what? What are the numbers here? What's 4, 8, 16, 20, 32? Okay, this is, yes, could be the word size, or could be, or in more details, this is the number of what? The number of bits. بالظبط كده. These are the number of bits for the bus. The bus is defined by its number of bits. Okay. Although the machines have started developed from 1970 till, and we are now in 2020 or 2021. Okay, you can see that we highlight in red the 8086 machines. This is our target architecture. This is considered to be ancient. This has been developed in 80s. So in this class, we will be dealing, or we will be learning, an ancient machine, a very old machine. It's called 8086 machine. This 8086 machine has been developed in the 80s. So it is almost 40 years old. Right. Why we are learning this old machine? Do you have any idea why we are learning this old machine? ليه راجعين ورا قوي كده؟ It's not how it started. It's actually بالظبط كده عبد العزيز. The simpler that has the basic architecture. Okay? So the machines before the 8086 was too ancient, too old to be learned. They are missing a lot of major architecture parameters. But starting from the 8086, mostly the machines have similar techniques of how they are operated. Okay, and as you can see here, they are simpler. The data bus is smaller. Data bus is 16 bits. The address bus is 20 bits. How and why we will learn. I will explain all of this. But you can see here with the upcoming generations of the microprocessors, the data bus is getting wider, the address bus is getting wider. Okay, from 16 they go to 32 and then to 64, and some machines right now is developed with the 128 bits. Okay, so for the demonstration of this class, we will take a machine that is it's a little bit old, but it is simple to understand and demonstrate the concept of the microprocessor. So this is actually the picture of the chip. We will talk about each pin. You know what's pin? Have you seen this before? This shape, you have seen it before? I think yes. Okay, most of you is already taken or have taken a DLD. مش كده ولا ايه؟ تمام? It's a chip. Okay, this is the IC, how it looks like. Okay, and this is how the IC for the 886 and the 888 would look like back in 1980s. Okay, it's a chip, it's an IC with the pins, and those pins are representing here. Those pins representing what? أيوة كده. Bravo, Abdul Aziz. This is the bus. Okay, these pins together are building my system bus, because this is how I can communicate or connect the microprocessor chip to the outside world. تمام كده. So those pins are connecting me to the outside world. That means this is actually, most of those pins are for the bus. But you can recognize here, can you recognize pin number 1 and pin number 40? pin 1 و 40 دول عارفينهم، احنا مشهورين قوي. ايه دول؟ دول ايه؟ الجراوند والفي سي سي. It's an IC. تمام؟ You taking دي ال دي لاب، مين خد دي ال دي لاب؟ يعرف الفي سي سي والجراوند. صح؟ تمام؟ يبقى this is the voltage source and type. This is the voltage source and the ground to power on the chip. أي electric circuit محتاجة باور. صح؟ جميل. كلوك ها، مين يطلع لي كلوك دي بين نمبر كام؟ مظبوط. It's pin number 19. Why we are using the clock? Because the synchronous sequential circuit. المايكرو is a synchronous sequential circuit. طب ايه الدليل انه synchronous sequential؟ نعاكس الناس شويه ونرجع للدي دي. Why it is synchronous sequential؟ ايه اللي جواه يدللك ان ده يبقى لازم يبقى synchronous sequential؟ ما اعرفش ايه البروجرام كاونتر ده. ايه البروجرام كاونتر؟ ما اعرفش البروجرام كاونتر. احنا لسه ما اتكلمناش على البروجرام كاونتر. واتس ذا بروجرام كاونتر؟ ما اعرفش ايه البروجرام كاونتر ده، ما سمعتش عنه قبل كده. ايوه كده تمارا. اوكي because it has registers. مش كده ولا ايه؟ مش في registers. What's the register? The register is synchronous sequential circuit. Okay, so the whole microprocessor chip is synchronous sequential circuit. It is managed by a clock. تمام؟ عارفين المعلومات من دي. تمام؟ agree؟ طيب خلاص اتفرجنا على الشيب، خلينا نخش للكلام المهم بقى. تمام؟ The most important thing that we need طبعا هنا ايه؟ He is actually talking on those 3 slides. Slide number 6, slide number 7, slide number 8 is actually dissecting these pins into the 3 main buses that I have. Okay? I have in the system bus is dissected into 3 buses. زي ما ايه قلنا من شويه. ايه هم ال 3 buses بتوعي؟ I have address bus, I have data bus, I have control bus. Okay? Today we need to understand what is the system bus, what is the data bus, what is the control bus. And in order to understand all of this, we need to go back to our board to understand the whole concept. And actually, it is the moment right now to understand the main memory architecture or organization, whatever you call it. خليني بقى let's stop the sharing here. Let's go back to our board. Right. Now, كل معايا؟ كل مركز؟ We will start from outside till inside. We have 2 main components that we want to talk about. We have the microprocessor chip. The chip that we have just seen, and it has the pins. The microprocessor chip is connected to what? From inside here, I have 2 major components. نرجع تاني. اللي هم مين؟ two main components بنتكلم we will discuss them, we will deal with them. هم 3 components. صح كده؟
It's lagging.
It is lagging. There's a problem with the voice.
Yeah, it cuts. It continually cuts.
Hello. Okay. Hello? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you see me now? Clear? Now it's clear. الحمد لله. طيب جميل قوي. يبقى نرجع تاني هنا. يبقى احنا عندنا what are the two main chips or components inside the microprocessor that we will be dealing with? ها؟ حد ينطق يقول ايوه ال ALU والregisters. طيب before we talk about the ALU and the registers, we need to talk about the main memory. The microprocessor, to talk to the main memory, you go through the system bus. مش كده ولا ايه؟ صح؟ Before we go and discuss the system bus, we need first to understand the main memory. What is a main memory? What's the main memory? Main memory is storage. It's a cell of storage. Do you expect that when we deal with this storage, we will go into the bit granularity? يا راجل مش معقولة، ده كلام مش هينفع. إذا كان الريجسترز بنتكلم على packing of bits, the minimum meaningful or significant size of registers is maybe 4 bits register, or 8 bit, the one that we designed in DLE, or maybe 8 bit registers or 16 bit registers. This is the first information that we want to learn about the microarchitecture that we're talking about. Most, not all, most of the registers in the microprocessor are 16 bits. That's why we call this a 16-bit machine. We have the machines to be 16 bits. When I identify a machine, there is a parameter that I define for the microprocessor. How many bits of that microprocessor, which actually indicates the majority of registers inside the machine. When I say that this processor is 16-bit processor, that means most of the registers inside the microprocessor are 16 bits. Okay? El-Pentium machines was 32-bit machines. El-Core machines that we are core 2U or i3 وال-i5 وال-i4 وال-i7, okay? The current microprocessors in the market are 64-bit machines. That means most of the registers are 64 bits inside the machine. Agreed? Right. Now let's go back to our main memory. The main memory of we are talking about the 8086 machine. اللي هي part of the x86 family. This is the big family for the machine. They have generations of this family. We are talking about the 8086 type. Now let's go back to the main memory. What's the main memory? Main memory, and memory is an array of storage. طيب. For any array of storage, الميموري دي هي عبارة عن array. يعني ايه array؟ يعني it has memory cells that memory has what's called the width of the memory. And it has length. It's two-dimensional storage. All the main memories خلقهم ربنا. We will be discussing of them, okay? to unify things, to make things easier, the width of the memory is the size of the unit of storage of the memory. This is the unit of storage that you can deal with. The width of our memory is 8 bits, means 1 byte wide. يبقى كل 8 bits are stored together and forming 1 byte. واضح؟ يبقى can I access the bits of the memory? Can I access the bits of the memory? The answer is no. I have to access the bytes of the memory. I have to access the bytes of them. The unit of access in the memory is 1 byte. يبقى نكتبها هنا عشان تبقى واضحة. Unit of access of the main memory is 1 byte. تمام؟ The length of the memory for the machine that we are talking about, okay, is 1 megabyte. يعني ايه 1 ميجا يعني 1024 في 1024 بايت. صح؟ ال 1024 بيدوني 1 كيلو بايت. اضربهم في 1024 يديني 1 ميجا بايت. That means this memory has a size of 1 megabyte. Agree؟ طيب ما قالت معلومه مهمه جدا وبتنط معها خلاص بتنططنا خلاص لحاجه مهمه جدا. اولا first we wanted to talk about something very important. ايه هو بقى؟ اول the first bus that we wanted to talk about between the microprocessor and the main memory is what we call the data bus. Now we have 2 options for the data bus. Do you think that the data bus to be خلي بالك من حاجه احنا قلنا دي 16 bits تمام؟ الريجسترز يبقى الريجسترز are most of them are 16 bits. 16 means bits يعني 2 bytes. تمام كده؟ تمام؟ What do you think of the data bus? The data bus has 2 options. حد يقدر يقولهم لي؟ Data bus in size has 2 لا قبل كده خلاص انا بتكلم in size. يبقى الباص بيتعرف بحاجتين بحجمه وبوظيفته او الدايركشن اوف ايه اوف اوبريشن. تمام؟ What is the size of the data bus between the 8086 machine and the main memory? الباص ده ايه هم ال 2 options المعقولين؟ What are the 2 reasonable options for the size of that bus? ايوه جميل قوي حلو قوي. هو هيبقى حاجه من 2 مفيش غيرهم. يا اما يبقى حجم الداتا باص قد حجم اليونت اوف اكسس ان ذا مين ميموري اللي هو يبقى 1 بايت عشان يماتش الميموري اكسس. Or it could be 16 bits 2 bytes to match the registers. At the end of the day, data bus is for the data. It's to carry the information of data going back and forth from the main memory to the register and from the register to the main memory between the microprocessor and the main memory. صح كده؟ Okay? They choose to make the data bus for this machine matching the size of the registers. يبقى الداتا bus is 16 bits. يبقى عرفنا يبقى احنا اتعلمنا النهارده حاجه عن الداتا بس. اتعلمنا عن نمره 1 it carries the data. نمره 2 its size matches the size of the registers inside the microprocessor. Okay? ايوه نمره 3 بقى، واللي بتقولها هند، واللي قاله مين؟ عبد العزيز، لا مش عبد العزيز، خالد. خلاص. The second thing that we need to learn about the bus is the direction of the bus. ايه ال direction of the bus? It is the flow of information on the bus. الباص ده رايح ولا راجع ولا رايح راجع؟ Is it unidirectional or bidirectional? The data bus is unidirectional or bidirectional? بالظبط, it's bidirectional, both directional, because I need to send the data from registers inside the microprocessor to the main memory and vice versa. يبقى الباص ده ايه؟ بنحط عليه سهمين كده لانه ايه؟ it is bidirectional bus. يبقى عرفنا ان السايز بتاعه 16 bits و it's a bidirectional. It carries the data from to the microprocessor between the registers inside the microprocessor and the main memory. طيب. How can I access the main memory? If the microprocessor needs to go to a particular byte or particular 2 bytes in the memory. Remember something. This complicates things. الباص هنا حجمه قد ايه؟ 16 bits. That means when I go and access the memory, do I access 1 slot of the memory or 2 slots? I have access 2 slots, okay? تمام كده؟ طيب. يبقى we are accessing 2 memory slots at a time. بغض النظر انا هاكسس 1 slots or 2 slots. How can I access the memory? تمام؟ ما قالتها. ايوه جميل حلو قوي. من خلال مين؟ من خلال address. I have to give to the memory. يعني انا دلوقتي I wanted to go to the memory and read some data from the memory. What should I provide to the memory? I wanted to give an order from the microprocessor to the main memory. I need to read the data inside your main memory. So what should I provide to the main memory? I have to provide to the main memory the address for where I want to access. My question is here is what is the size of this address? The second bus that we need to talk about is called مين بقى؟ الادرس bus. حلو قوي جميل. فاطمه بتقول 20. حد تاني له راي تاني؟ مين اللي رايه من 20؟ ليه 20؟ تمام؟ يبقى what is the size؟ محمد برضه قال 20. ليه 20؟ في ناس كده جابت منين ال 20؟ ليه 20؟ ليه 20؟ why 20؟ لان بالظبط كده، لان I have here 1 megabyte of memory. I need to access each of those bytes. That means I need a unique address for each byte of the memory. حطها حلقة في ودنك الكلمة دي مهمة جدا. يبقى الunit of access for the main memory is 1 byte. If I need to access each 1 byte and I have 1 megabytes, how many addresses do I need? Go back to DLD. If you have 2 memory locations, how many bits do you need to access them? You have 2 memory locations. How many bits do you access them? Only 1 bit. ليه؟ لأن أنا عندي الأدرس يا إما هيبقى equals to 0 يا إما equals to 1. طيب يبقى دول 2 slots. طيب what if I'm looking for a memory that has 4 slots? memory فيها 4 بايتس بس. How many addresses I need? Okay? How many bits of address to access the 4 bytes of memory? يبقى لو الميموري عندي is 4 slots, I would use ها 2 بيتس. ليه؟ لان 2 بيتس هيدوني كام؟ 4 كومباينيشنز. فاكرين الرول بتاعت الدي ال دي؟ اوكي. I have 0 0 for the first location, 0 1 for the second location, 1 0 for the third location, 1 1 for the last location. يبقى I need 4 combinations. I need 4 addresses. احنا قلنا ايه؟ In the machine I'm using the binary for everything, for the data and for the addresses. Okay? طيب what if I want to access 8 slots? How many bits of address do I need? 3 bits. لأن 3 bits هيدوني كام؟ دي ال دي بقى اللي مذاكر دي ال دي هيدوني 8 combinations. يبقى 3 bits هيدوني 8 combinations. يبقى I can have a unique address for each memory slot. طيب لو الميموري عندي 1 كيلو بايت, how many address bits do I need? 1 kilobyte means I have 1,024 different unique locations. That means I need 10 bits for the address. يبقى ال 1 كيلو محتاج 10 bits. ال 2 slots محتاجين 1. ال 4 محتاجين 2. ال 8 محتاجين 3 and so on. You get the idea? You get the concept? Clear? يبقى the address bus is actually providing يبقى هنا the address for the memory location where I want to access in the memory. جميل؟ يبقى عرفنا what is the purpose of the address bus. The purpose of the address bus is to provide the address from the microprocessor to the main memory where you want to access. طيب. What is the size of the address bus? It depends on the size of the memory. This machine, the x86 machine, has memory size of 1 megabyte. That means I need 20 bits. لأن 2 to the power 20 will give me 2 to the power 20 different combinations, 2 to the power 20 different addresses to address each byte of the memory. يبقى الثاني بارامتر عرفناه اتعلمناه النهارده عن الادرس باس ان هو ايه؟ ان هو قد ايه بقى؟ It's 20 bits. ثالث حاجه عايزين نعرفها عن الادرس باس اللي هو ايه بقى؟ الدايركشن. Do you think that the address bus is a unidirectional or bidirectional? مين اللي ايوه؟ فاطمه بتقول باي. فاطمه بتقول باي. ليه يا فاطمه باي؟ عبد العزيز قال باي كمان. Do you ever need to send an address from the memory to the microprocessor? This never happened. You always want to locate some byte inside the main memory. So the microprocessor always needs to identify the address where to go to the memory. صح كده؟ يبقى direction of data going or direction of address is going always from the microprocessor toward the main memory. يبقى ده ايه؟ unidirectional. طيب. Agree? Make sense? Any question? Okay? طيب. If I wanted to write some address for the memory here, تمام؟ Will we use the bits? لا دي هتبقى شغلانه سوداء، صح؟ That's why throughout this class we will not talk about we will not deal with the numbers in binary وطبعا مش بالديسيمال. تمام؟ If I want to talk about an address, which numbering system you expect is reasonable? أيوة كده. مين؟ الهكسا. صح؟ So hexadecimal. So I may see an address for this memory location looks like what? Like this. هنا خليني كده أكتب an example of an address here. How many hexadigits do you expect? احنا اتفقنا ان هو هيكسا. How many hexa digits؟ ايوه كده. مين اللي قال 4 عشان يتضرب؟ مين اللي قال 4؟ 4 ازاي؟ 20 bits in binary converted into each 4 bits give me 1 hexa digit. DLD صح؟ يبقى I have here 5 hexa digits. يبقى 5 hexa digits representing one address 20 bits in the main memory. Okay? As an example, this address could be like this: 5FA3BH. What I write here is a valid memory address, okay, in hexadecimal for the 1 megabyte, okay, of memory address in the 8086 machine. We will be dealing with the numbers like this extensively throughout this chapter. Okay, because this represents the address of the memory. Right. What is the last thing to complete the communication between the microprocessor and the main memory? So now the microprocessor should identify 20 bits of address to the memory, and the data will be carried on the data bus. What is that? ايوه كده. حلوه قوي يا خديجه. حلوه قوي. Control. What kind of control that I want to identify here for communication between the main memory and the microprocessor? لا انا ماليش دعوه بالهاردوير، انا بتكلم logically operationally to fulfill. ايوه كده. جميل. انا عايز اعرف دلوقتي I placed this address on the address bus. Send it to the main memory. So the main memory will know where to go. The second thing I wanted to indicate from the microprocessor the order of operation. Do I need to read the data from the memory so the flow of information will go from the main memory to the microprocessor, or I'm writing to the main memory? That means the data will go from the microprocessor registers through the data bus to the main memory. So the last bus that we want to talk about here is what's called the control bus. What is the purpose of the control bus? It gives me so far the direction of order from the microprocessor to the main memory to whether I am reading or writing. So far, what is the size of the control bus? What is the size of the control bus? So far, given the information, exactly Omar, 1 bit. 1 bit هيبقى enough. ليه؟ لأن ال 1 bit هكتب فيه واحد من معلومة من اتنين. Am I reading or writing؟ مش كده؟ يبقى given the information, if the microprocessor needs only to talk to the main memory, just to tell it whether it's reading and writing, the control bus is enough to be only 1 bit. But this is not true. There are some more information and more control between the microprocessor and the main memory. Okay? Right. The second thing, what's the direction of that bus? The control bus. Do you expect? You expect it? The information that we have also means that it is only one direction, because always an order from the microprocessor to the main memory. The microprocessor is telling the main memory, hey, I want to read, or hey, I want to write. So to give the order to the memory, whether if it is reading, so the main memory will take the data here, put it onto the bus, and send it to some register here. If it is for writing, that means the main memory will expect to get the data from the registers through the bus to write it into the main memory. So the order looks to be unidirectional. But for future, towards the end of this chapter, or in this chapter and in this course, we will learn that we need also to take some information. Let me just remember. Like it is unidirectional. It is unidirectional by all means. There is no, لا في طبعا في some commands needs orders to the microprocessor. We will talk about them, inshallah, towards the end of this course. Okay, so to be 100% يبقى here الباص ده it's a group of bits, not only one bit. The only bit that we learned today is the bit for reading and writing. However, the control bus has more than one bit for other purposes and has more than one direction for the other purpose. The only bit that we talked about today, اللي هو read or write, it's only one bit and it is one direction. Unidirection. Okay? However, the control bus contains other signals, okay, from the microprocessor to the memory and also to the other peripheral devices. Remember that the system bus is communicating the microprocessor to the whole world. هو ده شباكه أو نافذته للعالم الخارجي. فالمicroprocessor is communicating through the control bus to input-output devices, other input-output devices, and its control bus, okay, contains many other bits and contains, okay, some of unidirectional signals or unidirectional bits or pins. تمام? Today we only learned one pin only, okay, اللي هي read write pin, which is one directional. But later on, towards the end of this class, we will learn other signals for the control bus. Okay, so the control bus, to cut the long story short, the control bus is bidirectional and it contains a lot of bits. Not a lot of bits, but some bits. Okay, as it is listed in the slides. We will talk about the other bits, okay, inshallah, later on. But today, and for the teaching purpose of chapter number 2, all the information that we need to know about the bus is one signal for reading and writing of the memory. We need to learn the address bus of 20 bits, the data bus of 16 bits. This is bidirectional, this is unidirectional, this is bidirectional. We learned only one bit of it. Okay? Thank you for your time. I think we are already like exceeding our time today, but we have to understand this hierarchy before we go and talk about this. Is very important to understand, because based on this, the concepts that we learned here, we base on them everything that will come for this chapter and for the later chapter. So we have to understand all of this. Inshallah, in the next lecture, we will talk about the registers and the ALUs, mainly the registers. Okay, the ALUs we will talk about extensively in chapter number 3. But in chapter number 2, we will the rest of the chapter is covering the registers of the microprocessor, the 8086. Okay. Thanks a lot. Our quiz, inshallah, will be on Tuesday, next Tuesday. Only chapter 1, only true and false multiple choice for only 10 minutes at 5 p.m. inshallah. Okay. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the lecture of today, and see you, inshallah, on Thursday, completing the picture and talking more about the microprocessor registers. Today we covered the memory. Okay, any questions? Any doubts? حد محتاج مني حاجة؟ أي أوامر؟ Okay, the lecture is recorded and the video will be available on the Blackboard today, inshallah. في حد عنده أسئلة؟ You have class at 2, so what's the problem? We shifted the quiz to 5. You have class at 2, we have the quiz at 5. Yeah. حاضر حاضر يا عبد الرحمن. تمام. حاضر. I will go over the address again in the next lecture. However, this is very important. بس حاضر احنا شرحناها بس ماشي نشرحها تاني. طيب. Any other question? Thank you يا شباب. I wish you enjoy your day.